by the political mechanics almost of this, but it was such a dramatic shift in terms of the outcomes on the ground. I was just looking back at some of the numbers that up until I think it was November 2012, the gay marriage equality acts and provisions of various types had been defeated at the ballot box 32 times. I think that's the number, 32 consecutive defeats. There had been 70 million votes cast against equal marriage measures and such. Then suddenly, this dramatic reversal, and there began to be both electoral victories and then the sequence of court decisions where those dominoes did fall much faster than I think anybody was really anticipating. Even your organization had not expected that by 2015 we would be where we are. But so what was the fulcrum? What was the break point?
Until the political center of gravity hits a certain place, politicians, electeds are reluctant to take a stand. But once you get past 50%, 55%, and once you show that it's electorally viable, that you can run for re-election and still win and be in support, and once we showed, most importantly, once we showed what it really was all about, that when we won certain states and people saw same-sex couples who were married and met their families and their kids and saw that it really was about committed people getting married and not about all these other things that our opponents were trying to scare people with, they came on board.
Tell us the narrative of that to some degree. I mean,
Sure.
pick the right point in time.
Yeah.
But the gay rights movement essentially begins with the Stonewall Inn riot event of it's 1969, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so that's sort of the beginning of consciousness of this whole issue and activism. But so at what point does the movement toward winning marriage, as you define it, when does it really begin, and what are the key elements of it?
So I'd say the beginning of the fight for marriage in earnest was in Hawaii in the mid-1990s when same-sex couples filed a suit, and they won for the first time. They won the Supreme Court said that they needed to apply heightened scrutiny. It went back to a trial, and then we won in a trial. Now that was knocked out through a constitutional amendment in Hawaii, and then the result of that was Congress passing the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, which overwhelmingly signed into law by President Clinton. So that was for our community, that was the first real sign that we could win, that we could make our case, and that people would take this seriously. So I got involved in the early 2000s in Massachusetts, and that was the first court case where we prevailed and same-sex couples were able to marry. But back then, I remember so clearly the day that we won. I was broadcasting live on TV on New England cable news, and they were reading me all these different responses. And the usual suspects were strongly against President Bush, Governor Romney, the Catholic hierarchy, but so were the Democrats in Massachusetts, including Senator John Kerry, who opposed the decision and supported a state constitutional amendment to take it away. So really, from that point on, we had to figure out how to build power, grow public support, make our case, show that this wasn't an electoral disaster for people who stood with us, and that's what we did from then on, and that's the campaign I've been involved in for the last, really the last 15 years.